Okay, this is the first YouTube topic video blog I'm doing in about 6 years. And the subject for this video blog is the Hartford Whalers. The Hartford Whalers were a WHA slash NHL team that existed from 1972 through 1997. A little bit of background on the Hartford Whalers. They joined the WHA in 1972 as one of its chartered teams. The WHA was a rival hockey league formed by the co-founders of the ABA. And back in the early 1970s, the NHL kind of had a stranglehold on being the premier hockey league in North America, and they also controlled salaries of players and also had the reserve clause. So all players playing in the NHL through the early 1970s were bound to their team unless they were traded. And the WHA plucked a lot of some of the best NHL talent out there, including Bobby Hull, which he's signed with the Winnipeg Jets, and he got a signing bonus of $1 million, which in 1972 was a lot of money for a professional player. And anyway, the Hartford Whalers started as the New England Whalers, and for the first 2 seasons, they split their time between the Boston Garden and the Boston Arena, which is now the Matthews Arena on the campus of Northeastern University. And while the Whalers were tenants of both facilities, playing at the Garden, they were like on fourth priority, meaning that they got games on what dates were available that didn't have the Celtics, Bruins, or the AHL team that the Bruins were affiliated with, the Boston Braves. In the first season they were in the WHA, the Whalers won the AVO Cup, which was the equivalence of the Stanley Cup for the WHA. And the owner of the Whalers, Howard Baldwin, says he was losing a lot of money splitting time between Garden and the Boston Arena. So he looked for a new permanent home, and he looked to 2 cities in New England, Providence, Rhode Island, and Hartford, Connecticut. And he decided on Hartford, Connecticut. And in 1974, the Whalers relocated from Boston to Hartford, Connecticut, in state of the art at the time, Hartford Civic Center, which was rebranded as the XL Center years and years later. And they played the entire rest of the time in the WHA in the Hartford Civic Center, and except for a 2-year period in January of 1978, the roof of the Hartford Civic Center collapsed, so they had to play 2 seasons in Springfield. They had to split their time between the Big E exhibitions arena and also the Springfield Civic Center. The Hartford Whalers were one of the most successful teams in the WHA. In the 7 seasons they were in the WHA, they won. They made the playoffs all 7 years, and they had some good players during their WHA days, including Rick Lee and also Ted Green, who played for the Boston Bruins 1977. They got Gordie Howe and Mark Howe and Marty Howe from the defunct Houston Aeros. By 1979, the WHA was in financial ruin, and they agreed to a merger with the NHL, and the Whalers joined the NHL, but they had to change their name, get rebranded from New England to Hartford because of the Boston Bruins representing New England. And the Whalers were put in the Norris Division in 1979-80 season with the Montreal Canadiens, Pittsburgh Penguins, Detroit Red Wings, and Los Angeles Kings. The first season, the Hartford Whalers made the playoffs, but they got bounced in the first round. They got swept by the Montreal Canadiens. And the next year, 1980-81, they finished in last place in the Norris Division. And in 1981-82 season, they were relocated to the Adams Division with the Montreal Canadiens plus the Buffalo Sabres, Boston Bruins, and Quebec Nordiques. And it was a kind of a regional division, meaning that they played 8 games with their divisional rivals. But during that time period from 1981 through 1985, the Whalers were one of the worst teams in the NHL, but they had some decent talent, including Blake Stoughton and Ron Francis, Dave Tippett, Kevin Dineen, Mike Liut, and Ray Ferrara, and along also with Dave Babbage. In 1985-1986, the Hartford Whalers broke through and finished 4th in the Adams Division, and they had a first-round matchup with the Quebec Nordiques. They swept the Quebec Nordiques out of the playoffs, and then they had a tough 7-game series with the Montreal Canadiens, and the Canadiens beat them in 7 games. But the city of Hartford was so excited that the Whalers made it to round 2 of the playoffs that they had a parade in the city after they were eliminated. It would be the equivalence of the Boston Bruins, who had the best record in the National Hockey League this past season, having a parade for setting the most wins in the National Hockey League history and most points, and I get booted out on the first round. That would be what would the equivalence of it. In 1986-1987, the Hartford Whalers won the Adams Division, but they got bounced in the first round by the Quebec Nordiques. And then from 1988 through 1992, the Hartford Whalers hovered around 500, and they always would make the playoffs as the 4th place finish of the Adams Division, because at that time the Quebec Nordiques were very, very terrible, and the Whalers would always get bounced in the first round by either losing to the Montreal Canadiens or the Boston Bruins. But those first round playoff matches were very competitive. Also, the Hartford Whalers had a theme song called brass bonanza during this time period that do 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 do. And the games were televised on Sports Channel New England, which is now NBC Sports Boston, and they had some over-the-air games on Channel 18, which is now Univision, and also had them on CBS affiliate WFSB, Channel 3, and WBNE, which was the WB affiliate in Hartford, New Haven, how it's called by 9. But by the early 90s, Hartford was experiencing a lot of trouble as a viable NHL market. In 1991, at the trade deadline, the Whalers traded their best player, Ron Francis, to the Pittsburgh Penguins in return for a few players, including John Cullen, who was a decent NHLer, but he was no Ron Francis, and also player salaries were getting out of control in the NHL, and there was a lot of ownership changes for the Whalers. 1992, they got Jeff Sanderson was a star for the Whalers, probably the most successful player for the last 5 years in the NHL. But then they started losing on a consistent basis, losing lots of money. In 1994, the Whalers were sold to Peter Carmelos, and he said he wanted a new arena to replace the aging Hartford Civic Center, the XL, which is now the XL Center, because it wasn't an NHL arena like a state of the art anymore, because it lacked luxury boxes, and it was also part of a shopping mall. And Peter asked the state of Connecticut to help pay for the arena, but they said absolutely not. And then lots of players would come and go. In 1993, the Whalers drafted Chris Progner, defenseman, for the number 2 overall pick. He only lasted 2 years in Hartford. He had some maturity issues. He was traded to St. Louis Blues for Brendan Shanahan, who became the captain of the team when he right off the bat, but he didn't like playing in Hartford because of them not being a good franchise, and he was traded to Detroit. And the losses continued to mount for the Whalers. In 1997, Peter Carmelos said that the team would be moving, and he had a lot of cities in mind, including Columbus, the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Las Vegas, and Raleigh, North Carolina. And they decided to pick Raleigh, North Carolina, April 13th, 1997. The Hartford Whalers played their last game, and then eventually they moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, rebranded the Carolina Hurricanes, and they're still playing in Carolina. They've had some success in Carolina. 2006, they won the Stanley Cup, and they had a 10-year stretch of not making the playoffs, but as of this video, they are in the Stanley Cup playoffs. They won the Metropolitan Division 2 years in a row, and also won the Central Division in 2020, 2021 in the COVID abbreviated season. And ever since the Whalers left Hartford, many, many fans wish that NHL would return to Hartford. They sell classic Hartford Whalers merchandise like T-shirts and jerseys. A couple of times the Carolina Hurricanes have had um, retro nights with the Hartford Whalers jerseys. And I read a couple of books about the Hartford Whalers history, and they were pretty good. But realistically, an NHL team in Hartford probably is not going to work because they probably need a new arena. XL Center is outdated. I don't think there's too much land in the city of Hartford to build a suitable arena. A lot of people suggest they build the 18,000 seat arena in Foxwoods or Mohegan Sun, but that's like at least 50 to 60 miles away from Hartford. But the San Francisco 49ers play in Santa Clara, which is several miles from San Francisco. But I don't know if the NHL would want to have an arena at a gambling casino resort. But they embrace gambling, so that's really a good possibility. Plus, it's too close to Boston, the Bruins, and also the New York Rangers and Islanders and New Jersey Devils. Plus, with all the stuff of streaming, where would a possible Hartford Whalers team have the games televised on a streaming service or regional sports network, with all of them dying out, or an over-the-air television station? And even though it would be cool for the Hartford Whalers to come back, realistically, it's only maybe a 10 to 15% chance of them returning to the NHL. And what do you think about this video? Leave comments in the comment section. I'll be back soon.